we're going to start off in the OFC area,
Yeah.
where we have an interesting tournament being played out. Who gets the intercontinental playoff spot? They're actually not going to play there, though. They're going to play in Qatar.
Qatar's been hosting so many tournaments over the last 3 or 4 years. They're really using every single stadium in that country. And why not? Going to be really interesting. Obviously, there's not going to be any fans. But, for the viewers at home, let's break down this qualification for the OFC because they haven't played a single World Cup qualifying game yet. And now they finally will this coming Thursday. Yeah. So basically what it is it's the OFC Nations Cup, which is basically the Euros. It's the Copa America. OFCON. Yeah, exactly. So it's the same format, 2 groups of 4. The top 2 teams in each group go to the semis, and then the winner of that meets in the final. The winner of that gets one last chance as they'll play the CONCACAF fourth place team.
Yeah, that's what I want to bring up because we have a strong North American fan base. The winner of this conference is the one that we face off against.
Exactly.
Potentially Mexico could face off against if they land in the 4th spot.
Yeah.
So this is important. This matters. This tournament is not as small as it looks. Talking about the teams that are there, we got up top New Zealand, which is probably the favorite of the tournament.
Absolutely. Always are.
By far, yeah. Solomon Islands ranked at number 2. New Caledonia.
Yeah, New Caledonia.
Tahiti, Fiji.
Vanuatu.
And then Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, and then the Cook Islands. What was crazy about these 8 teams, 3 of them haven't played since 2019. 3 years ago was the last time that these 3 teams played. Tahiti, Papua New Guinea, and New Caledonia have not played since the Pacific Games in 2019. Man. Fiji and Vanuatu just played each other a week ago. That was their first game since 2019.
Wow.
Solomon Islands played 3 friendlies this last month, all against Australian second division teams. Like they played they played club teams.
What?
Yeah, bizarre. One of them actually was an A-League team, so top division, Brisbane Roar. But that's what Solomon Islands have to prepare with.
Did they win?
Yeah, so that was crazy. Is that like imagine being in that camp and losing those games, and that's your preparation for these qualifiers. Yeah. They won 2 out of 3. Okay. So that's not bad. If you're Solomon Islands, you take that. New Zealand actually had a really good preparation because they got a couple of friendlies back in October and November against like Uzbekistan, Jordan, a bunch of Middle Eastern teams. Yeah. So, they got that reputation as being the biggest team in Oceania, so they got that hookup. Right. So good for them because, any sort of competitive match is going to help out here. But, dude, this is one of the most bizarre things. I've never seen this before. The Cook Islands have not played since 2015. Yeah. 7 years have passed since this team gathered together and played football.
And played an official match.
And it was a qualification game for 2018 World Cup.
Okay.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? And what's even more crazy about this is that they haven't played in so long that they're actually not even in the FIFA World Rankings.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, if you look for their rankings, they're unrated.
Wow.
Yeah, which is insane.
Didn't they get into this tournament off of like an invite or something like that because the team couldn't make it, I think.
Right, so there was a qualifier game to get in for one spot. It was between the Cook Islands and Tonga. But there was a volcano eruption. I don't know if you heard about that. But yeah, the Tonga volcano erupted, and the Tongans were like, yeah, we can't play this game, obviously. So Cook Islands just get an automatic bye into this round with everybody else. Yeah. Realistically, they're probably going to lose every game, minimum 7-0.
Yeah, they're probably the weakest team here.
But by far. But looking at the teams in general, obviously we highlighted New Zealand. New Zealand actually have a very large European contingent in their team. Yeah. I was actually really impressed. Honestly, there are probably more New Zealanders in Europe than Mexicans.
Yeah.
Like by far.
They have a number of players. They have Chris Wood in the Prem.
Yeah.
That's probably their biggest player. But then they have a lot in the championship. They have some in like the MLS as well.
Yeah. There's a huge Danish contingent too.
Yeah.
They're playing in Denmark. It's pretty cool.
No, the team is actually surprisingly stacked top to bottom in terms of where these guys are playing at.
Yeah.
And I did that research too because I was like, how big is the gap between, say, New Zealand and Solomon Islands?
Yeah.
And it's pretty big in that sense. Solomon Islands only has 2 players that don't play domestically.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think this is shaping up to be a tournament for New Zealand where if they don't win, it'll be a monumental disappointment to not come out of here on top.
Oh, no, absolutely. But when you look at the group that New Zealand's in, if you're a really big Oceanic football fan, you'll notice that this is the group of death by far. It's New Zealand, New Caledonia, Fiji, and Papua New Guinea. These 4 teams were in the semifinal, or they were in the gold medal match and the bronze medal match in 2019. So these are by far the 4 best teams in the region, all in one group. So, if you're Papua New Guinea, Fiji, New Caledonia, you're like, shit.
Yeah.
We could have gotten in the other group and at least finished top 2. Now you got to play New Zealand on top of that. So it's really tough if you're in that group. But maybe even tough for New Zealand. Maybe.
Yeah.
Just because, in general, Oceania football hasn't really been going since COVID. It's one of the last regions to play soccer since the pandemic. So even these New Zealanders might not really know each other.
Absolutely. Circumstances surrounding the tournament could actually impact them negatively.
I think so. Yeah. I really do think so. Ultimately, I still have New Zealand topping the group.
Me too.
But there's something to be said about the Fijian squad, I think specifically. Their coach famously took Papua New Guinea to the final in 2016 in the OFC Cup, and they lost on penalties to New Zealand.
Wow.
So the guy knows how to take oceanic teams to the top.
Yeah.
So if you're Fijian, you also have Roy Krishna, who has an insane goal scoring rate. He plays right now in India, which is kind of cool, but his goal scoring rate is like 50%. Every other game, Krishna is scoring a goal. So that's something you can rely on. It's a really good sign. But so if you're Fijian, I think they have a decent chance. New Caledonia has been really good at club level, though. Hyungan Sport won the OFC Champions League 2 years ago. So maybe they have something to say. And then obviously Papua New Guinea, who last were in the final against New Zealand in 2016, maybe they pull something up together here. So since it's just one game against each other, single round robin, honestly, anything can happen. Right now, I probably have New Zealand going through, and either Fiji or New Caledonia. I'm just gonna put that out there.
I'm trying to put you on a New Caledonia, man. I think they got their third place going into this tournament.
Yeah,
and I like how they're positioned. I like what they got going on. Maybe don't they have a Spaniard coach too?
Oh yeah, they do.
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah,
I looked at his resume. He's been there for years.
Tenure.
Yeah, he's tenured. I guess he really likes the country too. Yeah. So, hey, he's got that connection with the people, with the players. Yeah. He knows those players probably better than anybody else. So, yeah, honestly, that's a good point.
No, I just think that every tournament that's shaped up like this, there's always one team that can surprise. And maybe it's New Caledonia this time around. Who knows? Or maybe it's Fiji. We'll see.
Yeah. I think... all I'm asking for them is to compete against New Zealand, and then from there, let's see what happens. Right. We go to the other group though, easily the weakest group. I mean, they have the Cook Islands in there. It's an automatic win if you play that team. No disrespect. It'll be a spectacle to even see them play. Honestly, Vanuatu don't have a lot to show for, but in 2016, looking at their stats, they actually weren't half bad. But the top 2 teams are clear: Solomon Islands and Tahiti. With me, I think the Solomon Islands will easily go through as top team in this group, solely just because a lot of their players have had experience, like in New Zealand, for example. Mika Lealafa, Auckland City ex-player, he's actually pretty good. He's not bad. So having a player like that, I think, is going to go a long way, especially when even the biggest gap in skill can be the decision for you, whether you win or lose a game.
Yeah.
So I think Solomon Islands are going to be top this group. Joining them, it's got to be Tahiti. I just don't see Vanuatu or Cook Islands going through even remotely. So then from there, if we go based off that, we got New Zealand against Tahiti, and then Solomon Islands against New Caledonia, let's say. If that's the case, I got New Caledonia
going through, man. Yeah. I got them going through.
I think the final will be a rematch of the Group B game. I really do.
Yeah.
And then from there... It has to be New Zealand.
Yeah, no, it has to. It has to. For them to not make it out would be probably on the same level as Mexico not qualifying for the tournament.
Yeah,
honestly, this is huge.
The gap, the level in the gap.
It's not even.
It's so big.
Remotely close.
Yeah.
My question is though, let's say what's most likely to happen. New Zealand does qualify. Do you think New Zealand this time around has the chops to challenge the 4th place CONCACAF team, who is basically going to be either USA, Mexico, Panama, or Costa Rica?
Right. Here's what I have to say. If somehow, first off, let's just start with probably the least likely. Let's say New Zealand don't win it, right?
Okay.
So let's just say New Caledonia go through, historic chance to be in the biggest tournament in the world. Mm-hmm. I think ultimately, no matter who they play, whether it's Panama, Costa Rica, US, I think New Caledonia lose that game. Mm-hmm. They'll lose that game. If New Zealand win the OFC qualification and play either the U.S., Costa Rica, Panama, or Mexico, no matter who it is, New Zealand's winning.
Whoa, Epa.
I'm not saying I can look into the future, but what I am saying is that it's time for New Zealand to go back to a World Cup. I think the fourth place CONCACAF team will be a little bit too volatile. Whoever it ends up being, there'll be a reason why they're in fourth place. And I think New Zealand will take opportunity of that. And let's not forget what this playoff round is for the intercontinentals, because it's different this time around. It's in Qatar. It's neutral ground. They both have to travel the same distance. It's so much different. 4 years ago, when Peru hosted New Zealand, and then Peru had to go to New Zealand, like they had literally had to go on the other side of the globe and play against Peru. That's almost impossible for if you're New Zealand. But now you get to go to a neutral ground where there's not going to be a lot of fans. Obviously, there'll still be some traveling. You get to prep the same way.
Yeah.
And it's one game.
That's the biggest factor.
That's the biggest factor.
It's one single game.
It's one game. I think New Zealand will take their chances if they get there, no matter who they play. No matter who they play.
When you think about the scope of CONCACAF, and you think about how in years past CONCACAF hasn't been this questionable when it comes to the depth of the teams outside of the top team, Canada. If you're New Zealand, you're like salivating at the lips. You're seeing this as a golden opportunity to strike on a weak or shaky CONCACAF team. I mean, we look at each one. USA, if we get a bad USA the rest of the match weeks in CONCACAF, this could be a really shaky squad to rely on a good result for.
Over one game.
Yeah. Mexico, same thing. Pretty much the same thing. And then Panama and Costa Rica, just on in terms of quality and level.
On pure consistency
New Zealand
merit,
could probably match.
Exactly. So I truly do have New Zealand going through if they win their qualification, which is highly likely. So, if you're New Zealand, hey, welcome to the World Cup.
Just for good measure, I'm saying CONCACAF wins out no matter what.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm going to get my take in for sure.
Okay.
So one of us has to be right, but I think CONCACAF still, at the end of the day, will manage to give New Zealand heartbreak. The World Cup starts now for all these teams in the OFC. It's going to be a fun tournament, just the way
it's fun, because it's over 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks in Qatar, so I'm sure the fields are going to be really nice.
Yeah.
And we're going to preview it to all these like little stadiums and stuff. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's see what happens.